Today we're going to consider a question posed by Jesus in the Bible.
Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life?
That's a good question, Jesus. Let's see if we can come up with any examples of such a thing happening. First, here's Anne. Once when she was in the shower, Anne noticed a small lump on her breast. She started to get worried about this lump, and as a result, she went to the doctor. It turns out the lump was cancerous, and because she noticed it early enough, she was able to receive treatments to help her fight it. This extended her life by many years. Or here's Jim. One day, Jim lost his job. While he perhaps should have counted on God to feed his family the way Matthew 6 says God feeds the birds, Jim instead worried about his lack of income. This worry drove him to find another job, which he did. Over the course of time, this job allowed for the nutrition, healthcare, and housing conditions that would combine to extend both Jim's life and that of his family. And finally, here's Bill. Once during the holidays, Bill was going to drive out of town to see his parents. He hadn't seen them in months and hated missing the chance to be with them. However, he also worried that icy conditions that night might make the roads unsafe, and this worry led him to stay home. As a result, he went on to live for 42 years longer instead of dying in the collision that would have met him that night. Each of these people found something to worry about, and by worrying, they added many, many hours to their lives. So I guess the answer is yes. People can add an hour to their lives by worrying, and Jesus is incorrect to imply otherwise. Now, of course, there is another side to this issue, which is that out-of-control worry can in fact be a bad thing. Obsessing with fruitless concern over a problem you can't solve not only causes you stress, but it wastes your time and distracts you from taking care of things you can change. But the fact still remains that when handled in a constructive way, worry serves an important function by alerting you to problems and giving you a sense of urgency about solving them. Now, of course, Christians might say that Jesus is only addressing the unhealthy kind of worry. I guess that might be the case. But if it is, Jesus expresses the idea poorly, using broad statements that lack any kind of nuance and are thus of little help to people. If he means what you say he does, he never says so. For comparison, just think of how easily I was able to give an offhand explanation of the nature of worry and the difference between good and bad worry, and how easy it would have been to include even such basic wisdom in the Bible. But that never happens. Instead, Jesus addresses the problem like this. Pause if you need to, and as far as you can, try to ignore your predisposition to believe the Bible is wise. Rather than the wisdom of a perfect God, this sounds like something any mediocre ancient teacher could have written, failing so badly to delve into the topic that I would less call it instruction than basic sentiment. After flatly telling people not to worry about providing for themselves, which is an extremely irresponsible thing to do, Jesus proceeds to make his point with demonstrably stupid analogies. He says that birds don't farm or store food in barns. And while this may be technically correct, it ignores the fact that birds constantly struggle to find food and compete for habitat. The fact that they do not engage in human farming practices does not mean that they live carefree lives being fed by God. So this example is nonsense, if not purposefully deceptive. He then says that we shouldn't worry about clothing because of the beauty of flowers. But humans use clothing for warmth and shelter from the elements. And the fact that flowers are prettier than Solomon's clothes has nothing to do with this need. Implying otherwise can only have been purposeful misdirection on Jesus' part. To construct this analogy, he had to go out of his way to choose the ornamental aspect of flowers as a point of comparison to human clothing, then skip past the actual issue at hand and hope nobody would notice. Most people today, including Christians, are far too sophisticated for such obvious tricks of language, and I'm pretty sure that very few would give any credence to such foolishness if it were found anywhere other than the Bible. So it should be plainly obvious to any Christian that this verse, like most of Jesus' teachings, is so flawed and simplified that it's of little use in guiding us through our daily lives. Whatever wisdom you see in this passage is wisdom you brought to it yourself. You already have a common sense idea of the role worry should play in your life, and you projected this idea onto some parts of the passage while using a sophisticated series of excuses to help you ignore parts that just don't make sense. Thus I would ask you, Christians, Are even the nicest, most inspirational parts of the Bible really any use to you?